When Rocky ran the steps, the entire country, the world, ran with him. When Indiana Jones grabbed his hat and his whip, an entire generation of kids went running towards adventure. Ripley went back for the girl. McClane crawled through the vents. Maximus asked if we were not entertained, and we were. We really, really were. For decades, American movies gave us heroes. Real heroes. Not perfect people. Better than that. Flawed people who chose to do the right thing anyway. And we didn't just watch them, we became things because of them. We sought greater things because of them. And then somewhere in the last 15 or 20 years, Hollywood decided that those heroes were the problem, that they needed to be deconstructed, humbled, mocked, revealed as frauds, bitter old failures, or obstacles for someone better to come along and step over. They've spent 2 decades killing our heroes. And we're going to talk about why. Because we're going to talk about the part that nobody says out loud. And the audience has rendered its verdict on this again and again in dollars. Hundreds of millions of them, in fact. Hollywood is losing this fight so badly, so publicly, so mathematically, that the only question left is how long they can pretend not to notice. So pop that tape in. I got you. Let's go do this. Before we get into what they have done, I need to tell you what they broke, because I don't think the people who broke it ever really understood what it was. I'm a filmmaker. If you follow me, you know that. And I can tell you something, and that is that a hero's journey is not about an ideology. It's not propaganda. It's not a political statement that snuck into movies in 1977 and needed correcting somehow. It is architecture. The framing of telling all stories is in this. It's the load-bearing structure of human storytelling, and it's older than any civilization on Earth. A person who is ordinary. They're called to something that they don't really want, a road that costs them everything, and a return, changed, scarred, carrying something back for the rest of us. Whether it is Moses, Odysseus, Beowulf, Luke, Rocky, Frodo, thousands of years, every culture, every continent, because the hero's journey isn't a story we tell about special people. It is an instruction manual for being a person, just a human. It's how every human who ever lived before now and in the future learned that suffering has a purpose, that fear can be walked through, and that ordinary people, us specifically, are capable of so much more than we think. And that's not something to be deconstructed because it's outdated. There is no version of human beings that's outdated. There is no version of human beings that needs to be deconstructed and reevaluated. And Hollywood has missed that on purpose. Really, the golden age was its last stand. This hero's journey, the heroes that we know. The 70s gave us Rocky Balboa and Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. The 80s were probably the greatest era in the history of this medium. Indiana Jones, John McClane, Sarah Connor, Marty McFly. The 90s tried to carry it on. Braveheart, Apollo 13, Forrest Gump. Heroes of endurance and decency. And then the early 2000s gave us the absolute last stand. You had Maximus in Gladiator, a general who became a slave and became a hero without an ounce of irony. Best picture, and the whole world cheered. You had Aragorn, who didn't want the crown, which is exactly why he deserved it. And you had Sam Gamgee. And I'll say this right here, because Sam carrying Frodo up that mountain might be the most pure act of heroism ever put on film. And then you even had Harry Potter, an entire generation of kids raised on the idea that love and courage and friendship beat pure power. Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, though, they weren't the beginning of this. They were the end of something. The last era when Hollywood made heroes straight. No wink, no apology, no asterisks. Somewhere right after that, though, roughly 15, 20 years ago, the industry made a turn. And they've been telling us why ever since, in their own words, in plain sight, ahead of the story, ahead of everything else. And this is what the turn looked like. This isn't just my interpretation. This is obvious. The pattern. You got to have pattern recognition here. On screen, it's in the record. It is there. And to call it out is to not be negative or anything like that. It is calling out something that is happening again and again. Luke Skywalker was the boy who saw the good in Darth Vader, despite anything else, when no one else did. And then he was brought back as a bitter old hermit who tried, or at least thought about, murdering his nephew in his sleep, because he might eventually be bad. And then he's out there milking an alien while the galaxy burned, and he didn't care. Mark Hamill himself famously said publicly that he fundamentally disagreed with every choice made for that heroic character. And then you have Indiana Jones, my favorite of all time, come back in Dial of Destiny as an old, bitter, divorced drunk who's sitting in his house drinking alone, bitter about his life, a man whose life's work is treated by the film as a punchline, an absolute punchline, mocked at every turn by a younger girl boss character who is instantly better than him at everything he ever did and faces no journey and no cost for it. They took a man who inspired generations of archaeologists and historians, and I'll come back to that, and they used his last movie to tell us we were fools for ever looking up to a person like this because they didn't even believe in what they were doing themselves. And guess what? It lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And just hold that number for a minute, because now we've got Supergirl. And the filmmakers told us out loud in interviews on the record before the movie ever opened that this version would throw out everything the character stood for. Truth, justice, American way, and it would be truth, justice, whatever. She'd be a depressed, hard-drinking anti-hero cynic who doesn't see the good in people, and that if this movie and those kind of things made a certain kind of dads angry, Christian dads angry, white dads angry, whatever, their words, not mine, that was actually a good thing. Stop and think about that for just a second. What that actually is. A studio spent $250 million on a movie, part of a huge cinematic universe that they were building, and the people making it announced as a selling point which members of the audience it was designed specifically to alienate. Now, that's not storytelling. That's not even politics, really. It's something simpler and sadder. It is absolute contempt. Contempt for the character, contempt for the audience that loved her, and contempt for the whole idea of what a hero is supposed to be. Someone who you'd want your kid to become. For the last 15 or 20 years, that contempt has been the style of Hollywood. But guess what? The bill is coming due, and they're trying to stave it off with one last stand. But here's what's happening right now, this year, at the box office, and I want you to watch what happens when you run this like a controlled experiment, right? Because that's what it actually is. Hollywood inadvertently did this. Supergirl, a deconstructed hero, contempt and cynicism built in, audience alienation in the marketing strategy, needs roughly $500 million to break even, and in 2 weeks, it hasn't even cleared $100 million. It's on a pace to be one of the biggest superhero flops on record, if not the absolute biggest. But now the same industry, the same year, Project Hail Mary, a reluctant, ordinary, good-hearted man who is terrified the entire time and goes anyway, who offers his life for the whole world earnestly because it is the right thing to do with no irony on a complete classical hero's journey. It demolished every expectation at the box office on its way to over $700 million. Dial of Destiny. Mock the hero, humble him, replace him, lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, Top Gun Maverick, same character, same man, same values, 36 odd years later, where young hotshots who mock him learn by the end of the movie that kind of heroism that he possesses isn't something to smirk at. It's not something to mock or deconstruct. It is something to aspire to and become. And over $1.5 billion later, it's one of the biggest films of the century. The Star Wars films that tore their heroes down are the most disliked entries in the entire franchise over 40 plus years. Now you have the Odyssey, a 2,800-year-old story, the defining moment of a hero's journey. Sold out theaters a full year in advance on the premise of the story and the director. And you saw what happened this week when the trailer suggested that promise was broken. You've got over 600,000 dislikes and counting. Do you see it? Do you really see it? This isn't a culture war argument. This is pure arithmetic, if you want to boil it down to that. Every time Hollywood puts an earnest, sincere hero on the screen, the audience shows up with billions of dollars. But every time they put contempt and cynicism on screen, every time they put agenda and ideology on screen ahead of that story, every time they wedge it in, they lose hundreds of millions of dollars. The experiment has been run over and over again on the largest possible scales, and the results are not close. What they're doing now with the Odyssey is taking the last big thing that they can fire, the last big shield. They are taking Christopher Nolan's name and the audience connection to him to try to push this in and save it one last time. All the cynicism, all the ideology, all of the agenda, all the deconstructing and demystifying our heroes, all putting the Mary Sues and the feminism over the top of it. They are using Nolan and his success as a shield to try to say, see, this will actually work, while they're guarding it over here, because the truth is, again and again, it has proved to be a failure. And the truth is, the audiences have never left. That's nonsense. Theaters are not dying because of any other reasons besides streaming and besides bad agenda pushing and bad films. The deconstruction of our heroes. Because when we get the movies that we want, the classic storytelling we look for, there's billions of dollars to be had because that audience never left. The audience never changed. The audience has been standing in the damn lobby this entire time, cash in hand, begging for real heroes. And Hollywood just keeps telling them, no, we have our agenda and we have our cynicism. Take it and eat it. And people are tired of eating the slop. So I want to tell you real quick why I take this so personally, and I mean personally, and it's when I was in 3rd grade, we had an assignment. You had to write down what you wanted to be when you grew up. And I wrote down that I wanted to be an archaeologist and historian like Indiana Jones. I wanted to be an athlete like Rocky, except I was a football player, not a boxer. So I wrote that I wanted to play football at the University of Georgia. And then I wrote that someday I wanted to write stories and make movies like the man who made those heroes, Steven Spielberg. And I gave that letter to my grandmother. She gave it back to me just a few days before she passed away. Suddenly, unexpectedly. And so that piece of paper, a 3rd grader's handwriting, 3 impossible dreams became one of the last things that ever passed between her and I. That and the peach cobbler that she made me the same day. And here's the part that I need you to hear. I became a history professor. I stood in front of classrooms and taught the ancient world, which is about as close as a kid from rural Georgia was going to get to being Indiana Jones, really. And I played football at the University of Georgia, and I spent 20 plus years writing and making movies. A letter written by an 8-year-old watching his heroes on screen turned out to be the blueprint for my entire life. And that's what a hero is for. Not to be realistic, not to be relatable, not to be deconstructed and have discourse around them and bring them down to your level. A hero doesn't exist for that. A hero exists so that kid in the 3rd grade can look up to something bigger, something greater, aspire to more than their own circumstances, and write down a future that no one around him would have dared to predict, and then spend 40 years walking towards it. Hollywood looks at Indiana Jones and sees a problematic artifact of a bygone era. I look at him and see the reason that I stood in front of a classroom. They have no idea the power they are holding. They never did. They just want to take whatever it is from you. And so this is where I'm supposed to tell you it's all over. It's impossible. That's what every video on this topic will tell you. The heroes are dead. The industry is lost. Subscribe for the next autopsy about this and we'll continue on it. But I'm not going to do that because to me that isn't true. And the numbers I just read to you prove it isn't true. You don't mourn something and say it can never come back if the audience is actively paying billions of dollars to get it back. Top Gun Maverick wasn't nostalgia, it was demand. Hail Mary wasn't a fluke, it was demand. A year of sold-out Odyssey pre-sales wasn't a habit. It was the loudest demand signal in modern movie history that people want the hero's journey, and they want it from skilled filmmakers. But when you take that from them, you see how that can be turned on with hundreds of thousands of disapproving dislikes. The hero's journey is 10,000 years old or more. It's outlived every institution that has ever tried to replace it, and it will outlive this one too. I promise you that. And the fix doesn't require anything new. It doesn't require new technology, new genius. Hell, look at Backrooms and Obsession, made for very little money by unskilled filmmakers. People want real stories again. But forget all that. Hollywood has forgotten how to do, or they have purposely ignored how to do the one thing they need to do, which is to give you a hero story straight. Give us a person who is afraid and goes anyway. Make the cost real. Make the journey real and painful. Make the return earned. Skip the winks, skip the asterisks, skip the deconstruction and cynicism. That's it. That is the entire recovery plan. Every studio that has accidentally followed that plan this decade has printed money. And the truth is, somewhere out there right now, there is a kid in 3rd grade, and whether that kid gets a Maximus or an Indiana Jones or a Rocky or a Luke Skywalker, or he gets a lecture, an agenda, an ideology, a deconstruction, and cynicism, depends entirely on whether or not this industry keeps losing money on contempt and messaging, or it finally notices what the audience has been telling it for years at the top of their lungs with their wallets. Our heroes are not dead. They are waiting. Some, as they always were, just sitting there right where we left them at the top of the steps, just like Rocky. And That's what I got for you. Drop it in the comments. The heroes that help shape you, help inspire you, and still do to this day. The ones that you practice becoming them, right? I told you mine. Give me some of yours. And that's what I got for you this time. Please like, subscribe, hype up the video. Make sure you hit the bell. There is a lot more here, a lot more that we will do, and I'll take you through that journey with me. If you'd like to support the channel a little bit more, my Patreon is always in the description. There you'll get physical media. We got to protect that too. Physical media reviews and deep dives, behind the scenes looks at my filmmaking, all my past live streams, members only videos, and so much more. And your name in lights on every single video, old school, hero style, and everything helps the channel, and I sure do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind like always. This is Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. I know.